Hi, Gene here with my thoughts for today. And today my thoughts will be, well, this is called Gene's geopolitical thoughts for the day. So geopolitics, we'll be going to Europe today, and we'll be talking, well, I was going to say fascism, but we're not really talking about fascism because fascism is a right-wing political philosophy, and we will be talking about the left today, the European left, specifically the European Union, the leaders of the European Union. But so I guess we'll say totalitarianism, authoritarianism, anti-democracyism. I guess that's what we're really talking about today, because there are events happening in Europe that echo what happened in the United States when we had this last election, actually the 2016 election, and something is similarly happening in Europe. And, well, we have MAGA, right? Make America Great Again. Well, we're starting to see, I guess you have to call it MEGA or MEGA, M-E-G-A, Make Europe Great Again, because what we're seeing is a massive shift to the right in Europe. That's what I'll be talking about today. The shift, but how the European elites, what they are doing to prevent the rise of the right, to prevent this shift to the right. All these leaders are on the left, and it's interesting. You talk about democracy. The European Union, in the first place, you have to remember that, well, first of all, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Union, was not elected. She was just appointed and by the European Union. But the European Union itself, the people of Europe, now our own country, when the Constitution was adopted, we all voted. Well, I'm not that old. I didn't get to vote on it, but the American people at that time voted for the Constitution. It was not imposed on them. But in Europe, it was mostly the governments of the various members, the members to be of the European Union. Say France, the French people never got to vote on whether they wanted to join the European Union. And you have one party, we'll be talking about her today, just mentioning her, Marine Le Pen. She is right now the leader of a party, the National Rally Party. I'm not going to try to pronounce the French name and pronounce it in French, but National Rally Party, that's a right-wing party, and one of their part of their platform, unless they changed it, was arguing to leave the European Union. Now she might have changed it. That I read about that, but the point is that the only place I can think of, the only country I know, Ireland had an election. The people were allowed to vote on whether to join the European Union, and they voted not to join the European Union. So what happened? The government of the Irish government that wanted to join the European Union, well, they called another election because the Irish people did not vote the right way the first time. So they had another election, and then they voted the right way. Ireland is, as we all know, in the European Union. But on the other hand, you have England. England was in the European Union. Again, the people of England were never allowed to vote for the European Union for membership, and England joined. But there was a big push by, we'll be talking about him too probably today, Nigel Farage. His party he formed a reform party. He was in the Conservative Party. He left because they were not doing anything to not join the European Union. He formed the Reform Party. Anyways, he was able to, through speeches, just from going into the marketplace of ideas, doing what Margaret Thatcher said, first win the argument, then win the election, and there was the British people, British subjects, were able, His Majesty's subjects, Her Majesty's subjects at the time, Elizabeth, so they were allowed to vote, and they voted to leave the European Union. They are no longer in the European Union, and, well, the Liberals side, the left in Europe, in England, they went apoplectic. They could not believe it. They predicted all sorts of disasters. They haven't happened. England is, as far as I can see, is still there and not having a lot of these problems that you're seeing in Europe with their economies. I know Germany is in a lot of trouble economically. They are having virtually no economic growth, and then now with the tariff dispute with us, with Donald Trump, who knows what their economic figures will be showing going forward. But anyhow, you're seeing this movement to the right all over Europe, and you could Germany, France, we'll be talking about today, and Romania, England, we'll be talking about, and the Netherlands too, Holland, and they had Geert Wilders moved. His party won a lot, won a very big victory. Not quite enough to form a government. Otherwise, Geert Wilders would be the prime minister of the Netherlands, and he wasn't. That was part of the deal. So somebody else is. But who knows what will happen in the next election? But the left in Europe has been just railing against all these right-wing candidates. You have Marine Le Pen in France. You have Alice Vidal in Germany. Her party, Alternative für Deutschland. Okay, Alternative for Germany. I got that out pretty, I guess, in German, close enough. And I don't know if she would be the chancellor if her party wins, but her party just won in local elections, won some very big victories. And her party is, I think they are the second most popular party in Germany. And what happened, all these other parties that would ordinarily not be compatible, I guess you'd call them the right party, the more Christian Democrats, they're kind of to the right. I mean, there's nothing compared to what you call the right here. The real right party is Alternative for Germany, or AFD. That's what their initials, AFD, and they just won a lot of elections. And this is the meat of what we're getting to now, is that what is happening in Germany? Well, the German Supreme Court, I don't know the official name, just declared, the AFD a threat to democracy, something like that, far right, extreme, and worried about authoritarianism, about totalitarianism coming to Germany because this party is doing so well. Now you have the National Rally Party in France. They are doing very well. And you have in Germany, let's go right down the list now, because you have in Germany all these parties that normally, I just mentioned the Christian Democrats, they're like a rightist party, and then there's the Green Party on the far left, and there's some other parties that ordinarily would be antagonistic, but they got together. They're all combining specifically just to keep the alternative. None of them, even though they're the second most popular party in Germany, the other parties, nobody will work with them, okay? They're doing everything they can to keep the AFD out of the government. Same thing in France. In France, you had this last election where Marine Le Pen's party did very, very well. They actually won the first round. In France, they have 2 rounds of voting, okay? So they have the first round, which is a whole lot of parties, and then you have the second round, where I think it's like a runoff. You have the top 2 parties. I don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on French politics. But what does matter is that they won the first round, and in the second round, you had Macron, the leader now, allied with parties that which he would ordinarily not align, and in order to all band together to keep Marine Le Pen's party out of government. But even more than that is, the point I'm getting to, and I will say over and over today, is who's the authoritarian? Who is the totalitarian? Who is the one who is the one against democracy? You're trying to, I just mentioned Alternative for Germany, that you had this declaration from the Supreme Court, and they are trying to, the German government is thinking of declaring, of banning the Alternative for Deutschland party, even though they are the second most popular party. Now you have in France, Marine Le Pen, believe it or not, her party was accused of corruption, some kind of corruption, and she is being sent to prison, and more than that, or paying a large fine. I think it's a very short prison term, and don't quote me on that. Maybe I'm wrong about that's my recollection, but definitely a fine. And more important, that she is banned from participating in politics for 5 years, which will conveniently be past the next election, so she can't run. So the French government is preventing her from running. And why? Because of corruption? No. Because she could win. And they're doing everything to keep her out of the government. Okay, now I just mentioned England and Nigel Farage, his Reform Party. They have about 5 seats now, I believe, in the Parliament. But they just had they call them by-elections. It's the equivalent of our midterm elections. A lot of local elections, and his party won such a big victory and over the conservative, just like we have 2 major parties here, the Democrats and Republicans. In England, they have the Labour Party on the left and supposedly the Conservative Party on the right, except they're not anything close to what we are. The right is here, and they got slaughtered in the last election. And Keir Starmer is the Labour leader. His I don't know. He would almost be jealous of Chuck Schumer, I guess, because his ratings are just down, and they got slaughtered now in these by-elections, and you would expect the Conservative Party to do well, but they got slaughtered too. Who did well? This new party that Nigel Farage formed, the Reform Party, and it's basically Nigel Farage, if you don't know, very close friend of Donald Trump, great admirer of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. He wants to do the same thing in England. He wants to definitely on immigration, shut off the immigration, and tax cuts, and just whole very conservative policies. And we'll have to see what happens, because they won really big. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any attempts by the Labour Party is so weak now. I don't know how they could suppress the Reform Party. We'll see what happens. But now you go to Romania, and I believe his name is Georgescu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was a candidate. He won a first round, or he won the election for president of Romania. He won. And what happened? The European Union pressured the Romanian government to cancel the election and ban him from running, and that's exactly what happened. Romania, they canceled that, they voided that election that Georgescu won, and they canceled the whole election. They banned him from running. So now they just had an election. Today's the 5th. I think it was today or yesterday. I'm recording this the day before you're seeing it, and that party ran another. They didn't ban the party; they banned him, Georgescu. But the guy, I think his name is Simon, last name, not first name. And anyways, that was a candidate. He just won. I don't know if a first round a first round. They do the same kind of thing. He just won, and we'll see what happens. But then you go one more. This will be the last one. The Netherlands, I mentioned Geert Wilders. He won this big this big election, Dutch election. His party had the most. They didn't get a majority. It's hard. That's hard to do in Europe because they have parliamentary systems and they have all these little parties. In most, England is kind of an exception. The other countries, all these little parties, they have to band together to form a governing majority. They don't elect which I think is stupid on their part, but I'm going to digress. That's what's so wonderful about our country, that the founding fathers looked before they wrote the Constitution. They looked at other governments and they looked at the parliamentary system and they rejected it, and because they don't have a strong executive, a president. The prime minister doesn't have nearly the power that a president does. And what they don't have, if you're talking about democracy, preventing the first, you vote for the parties, and the party that wins, and they put a coalition together, then they have to choose, usually the party that got the most votes, one of their members would become the prime minister. And the problem, what I'm getting at, is that you always have the prime minister and the legislature are the same, always controlled by the same party. You don't have what we have here, where you have you could let's say, well, as we have today, you could have Republican president, Republican Senate, Republican House, but we have elections every 2 years, and that's what the Republicans have to worry about, midterm election, where the American people will, even though you will still have a Republican president for the next 2 years, unless, the Democrats go crazy. Well, if the Democrats win the House, then you can bet that they'll spend the whole 2 years impeaching Donald Trump. And, for what? Doesn't matter. They'll make something up, just like they did the last two times in his first administration. But the point is, though, that the American people, if they don't like what the president is doing, they can within 2 years, they can give control of the Congress, both houses, one house or both houses, to the other party, and they can act as a check and balances, as a check on the president. But they don't have that in these parliamentary systems. So you have somebody like Geert Wilders, his party got the most votes, but he cannot be prime minister because these other parties will band together, which in that sense, that's democratic. But when you have the governments banning parties, putting people in prison, preventing them from running, I mean, that's something you would expect in Venezuela, but not in Europe, in the European Union, and it's really shocking. And then the other thing, their problem that they have with free speech, the way they are going after. Well, I was going to say the way they're going after Elon Musk, especially because they hate his guts, but also Google, and telling them to control, stop misinformation and disinformation on their site. So it basically shut down free speech, just like Biden tried to do, even so, and any disputes about any disagreement with COVID, with their COVID policies, or the danger, or whether it came from China, so on and so forth. And they've succeeded. A lot of our people went around with it. When Facebook, for instance, went along with it, and they would just suppress certain posts. So, but in Europe, it's much, much worse. And you have the whole European Union very openly. It's called the Digital Services Act. They passed actual legislation, and they're forcing, and they're imposing these large multi-million fines on our media, on Google. I think was the most recent one. I know X was, and and forcing them to change their policy. So to me, that is not democracy, but that is what they're doing. And this whole thing reminds me of a quote by Tom Wolfe, the writer, and he Well, let me digress and recommend Bonfire of the Vanities. Great book. And if you want, I lived through that time. I used to live in New York. What the New York in the 1980s was like, how crazy it was. That is a great book to give you an idea. I mean, it's you had to live through it, but I tell you, the book was really close. But there's a quote. There's a quote from him. He's one of these guys with the pithy quotes, and he said. Fascism, the dark night of fascism is always descending on America, but it always lands in Europe, and that's exactly what we're seeing. It's sad, and they've been called out by Vice President Vance and by Secretary of State Rubio, and they're just they're going crazy in Europe because they don't know what to do, and they have this big problem that the people. I guess I'm reminding now Bertolt Brecht, okay, also the playwright, and I forget it was a Threepenny Opera. I forget which play it was, but I was talking about a politician saying, well, you have to abolish the voters, the electorate, and elect another electorate. And that's the kind of situation they're sort of finding themselves in, that the people, as far as they're concerned, are not voting right. And they have a very big problem that Europe is moving right. MAGA, make Europe great again. They are moving to the right. They have seen there was no problem. Nobody tried to suppress her, but Giorgia Meloni, let me mention her, in Italy. The European people are moving to the right, and the European elites, the oligarchy, they are panicking. They're just panicking over it. And personally, I hope I'm not hurting too many European feelings if you're watching this from Europe. But I'm popping popcorn, and I'm enjoying this spectacle. I'm enjoying watching this because I know that freedom will win, and freedom. You might want to sit down for this, people on the left. Freedom, democracy, it's on the right. It's not on the left. And that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. Your comments, I might get a few this time. We'll see. Your comments, welcome in the comments section below the video. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. But most of all, come back and see me again. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it, like every member of the European Union. And, well, I'd love to see you're all welcome to come back again. I'd love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.